Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of ICRC-TV COVID HR updates. Do you realize it's December? It's December. And after almost a year of these shows, I decided it might be kind of fun to bring Scott Warwick back on and have you listen to Scott and I go back over the FFCRA and all the different details of that. Viewers, the FFCRA, no, let me back up. Much of the CARES Act, if not the entire CARES Act, is going away December 31st, 2020. Weeks. We are in the last days, not in the last days of the pandemic. Trust me, as I was going through my research this week, I was digging as hard as I could to find out how we could see an end to this pandemic. But of course, the Department of Labor doesn't have anything to do with that, nor does the IRS. However, those two entities, as powerful as they are, have everything to do with the FFCRA program within the CARES Act. So on today's show, we're going to talk about all the intricacies and all the documentation and all the details that as employers or as GMs, office personnel, anyone of authority within your company, if you had anything to do with the FFCRA programs, you're going to want to take notes on this because this is information you have to know based on the IRS and the Department of Labor. Then we're going to kind of talk a little bit about a couple other changes that are taking place, and we want to kind of bait you a little bit because in the next two episodes, we're going to be talking about the vaccines. Obviously, that is the hot topic. So we're going to start giving you as much information in regards to making an educated decision on whether you want that vaccine in, or you're going to make it a condition of employment within your company. So why don't we just get started for today? Scott, welcome. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. And yeah, this issue just doesn't go away. And we were talking earlier. I mean, I've gotten calls this week. And it's only Tuesday on Families First Act.
Yeah.
And what do we have to do and things like this. So, you know, it's this whole coronavirus thing with these two like major pieces of legislation, whip, bam, boom, put together. There's a lot of confusion. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about at the end of 2020, and God knows what you're going to have to do going into 2021.
Well,
pay attention.
That's it. I think the idea of this show didn't necessarily come in from one of my clients, but from a number of individuals who, as you said, are still just a little bit confused. And let's be truthful, if a plan or if another piece of what they call it, the pandemic relief or relief package is signed and put into place here in the next couple of days, that's going to be a whole new set of rules. I mean, none of us should be foolish enough to think that they're just going to say, oh, okay, well, everything that's in place now, just continue on. They don't work that way. Remember, during this pandemic, we've learned to say never say never. So we know that change is the only constant in the universe. So change is coming. So let's talk about the FFCRA programs. Let's package those up so that it's all clean and tight and we can put them away and get prepared for the next. Real quick though, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping up front, and I wanted to go over, a statement came out from Johns Hopkins about masks, and that's one of your favorite topics. I know you just love to talk about your masks.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well make them work, make them fun. You know, did you ever think that your fashion statement and some of the funnest Christmas presents or holiday presents are going to be getting somebody a really cool mask?
Well, I like that comment because what the paper was on and what he is saying is that he's now realizing that people are not taking care of their masks, and he wants us to all back up and review our masks and find out, you know, or just identify if we need to throw them away. So he's giving you a list and he's stating, you know, check your masks to make sure that there aren't any thinning areas, make sure that you can't see through them, make sure that there aren't any holes, and make sure that they're fitting, because I've even noticed with the masks that were sent out by workers' comp here in the state, they're shrinking. They're they're shrinking and they're sliding over people's noses. So they're fitting this way, but they're starting to shrink this way. That, you know, that's dangerous, guys. You know, masks, if you're not going to wear an effective mask, don't wear a mask. Well, you have to wear a mask, so you have to wear an effective one.
Let me show you what I got from Amazon. Maybe this will help. See my little bag of things here?
Oh.
Those are nose strips. Let me put this up here so you can see it. Can you see that okay in the inside?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, they're dirt cheap. And I never did find anything that would keep my glasses from fogging up. All of the products on the market are crap. They don't work. You might as well just lick them. That's about how good they are. But I can tell you, these are really great. They've got an adhesive on the inside. I stick them on the inside. And so when I put the thing on, which I'm getting pretty good at, you just come down. I got lots of room, okay, in these. And you just push it.
Oh no, Scott, that's brilliant. And those are on Amazon?
Oh my gosh. You're almost going to be able to order a bride on Amazon here pretty soon. I mean, you get everything there. And even those of you who are anti-Amazon, I can't find these little clips. And I got like 100 for like, I don't know, $5 or something. It's really cheap. Okay. And so, you know, you just keep them on there all the time on the side and you wash it. You should be washing them, okay? And actually, every time I go out and use them, I'm still using my Galen's vodka with some peppermint in it or something, make it smell good. And peppermint is a natural essential oil that will kill germs. I squirt the inside and I squirt it, throw it in my car. And I've only got like 30 of these things, just all kinds of different things. And so, you know, I'll tell you, one of the best things I found is that little nose strip in there. They're dirt cheap. Boy, I don't even worry about fogging up my glasses. It adheres perfectly to it. And some of these masks, I've just gotten these online from all kinds of different places. I've noticed that some of them that I've gotten are just too small. They just don't fit real well. But you can see all the room I've got in this one. I mean, it goes way down under my chin, plenty of room. Wash them every few times. That's what I do because I don't spend a lot of time out. Now, I had a deposition the other day when we did depositions in person. And actually, we were deposing the other side and we wore masks all day.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, wore masks all day. Really wasn't that bad when I had my nose strip in there. And then on breaks, we'd split up. We'd go outside, things like this. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you shouldn't be able to see through your mask. No. Okay, that's just common sense. I mean, I hope you change your socks as they start to wear out and you get holes in them and things like that. I mean, I do that with my hat. So who's wearing around a holy mask? What? Really?
Oh, he's got another trick too. Now that it's getting colder, this paper specifically says if you can see your breath, if you walk out into the cold environment and you can see your breath extend beyond an inch of your mask, it's too thin.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've got the kind, and I get these, I don't know, all kinds of places. I get these that look human. Just a plug. It's not a plug. It's just I like them there because a bunch of smart aleck masks and things like this. I got little trolls and things like this. But if you look in these masks, if you look on the inside, you can put a coffee filter in there.
Oh my goodness, I totally forgot you mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes I won't wear that coffee filter, but that's a good point. If you can see your breath or something and you're just kind of wondering, you just take you don't have to order anything. Just go to Kroger, Giant Eagle, or Piggly Wiggly, or wherever it is you go, and just cut a coffee filter and just stick it in there. It's brilliant. Not hard.
That's brilliant. The other thing I wanted to kind of go over is a reminder to our employers, guys, the claims or the cases of unlawful termination are rising. Now, months ago, we tried to help you understand all the three main reasons why people were starting to begin to see a rise in lawsuits here in the country. But I really want to go over these one more time because, again, as additional states are starting to lock down and close down, I know you're going to have to make some very difficult decisions. I want you to be very cognizant that you, again, Scott and I have tried to tell you over and over again, partner with your labor law attorney, partner with your HR consultant, and have these discussions before you terminate anyone right now, because it is getting scary. A number of cases are coming through because employers are not exercising the WARN Act. And Scott, you can explain the WARN Act to them.
Yeah, WARN Act basically is where you're going to lay off a significant number of people. And there's some real specifics there. I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but if you're laying off 5 or 6, 10 people, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking like 50 people, you're on a mass layoff. There's a few things out there. First of all, the WARN Act, if you're laying people off because of a downturn in business or something like this, if you want an exception to the WARN Act, let me just also fill in, the WARN Act says that if you're going to have a major layoff, and honestly, if anybody wants to write to me, because I've got this, it's kind of funny, I got a call on this. Some of the colleges and universities are using my book, The HR Professional's Guide to Federal Employment Labor Law. Mm-hmm. It is not in print. I mean, it's in a PDF file. Mm-hmm. And just give you why, because it's 700 pages, okay? And it's getting bigger like yeast every year, okay? Like I was talking to Pandy before we got started here. I've got another 70, 80 pages of legal stuff that's just happened this year.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, I always worry. It's like, how am I going to get it all into 6 hours? Oh, Pandy, I don't know, I'm going to have to brainstorm on something, because with COVID, I mean, that alone would fill 20 pages right there. But all these other things, WARN Act is really important. And I got a call from one of the professors that we did this kind of thing with his class, and we talked about the WARN Act. Mm-hmm. The WARN Act says you have to give a notice to all these people like 60 days or something before you should. Don't quote me. It's been a while since I looked at that particular provision. But you can't, if you're going to lay off like 100 people and you've only got like 125 people and something like this or whatever, and you meet these numbers, you've got to give a notice to the local city. You know, and imagine why that is. Let's say that you are General Motors and you're shutting down Lordstown or some of these places over in Eastern Ohio, and 1,000 people are going to lose their job. Well, that's going to really impact that local municipality, and not to mention, you know, those families and everything. So you can't just come in and say, well, we're laying off because of COVID. Well, you're going to have to show. Now, there is an exception in WARN for unforeseen circumstances, natural disasters. Like, you know, think about this. Let's say that you are down in Louisiana and Hurricane Katrina comes through. Well, you can't give a 60-day notice if it just flattened your facility. Okay, so you see there's a reason for that. Well, you're going to have to show that this was an unforeseen circumstance, or that this was an emergency for COVID. So that can be a little tricky. Just, I mean, if you've got a lot of cases, that makes it a little easier, but that can make it really tricky. Now, we're not talking about the local restaurant that has 20, 25 people. We're talking about larger employers. But if somebody shoots me, if you go to my website, scottwarwick.com, and here's what I've decided to do for the COVID stuff, because we could spend 2 hours just talking about COVID laws and rules like Family First Act and CARES Act. I've posted, I call it the complete learning system for Families First Act. If you go to my website, scottwarwick.com, and click onto the very attractive COVID virus that's right there, right on the front page, you'll see a video in there that's 2 hours long. It'll teach you everything you need to know about Families First. And I didn't put anything about the WARN Act because, quite frankly, we're so worried about other things, you know, that was an issue. But if you have a large facility, 100 more employees, something like this, and you are going to start laying off because business is down or something, you absolutely positively have to call your labor employment attorney. Don't call the guy who did your will.
No.
They're very useful, but not for this stuff. This is a specialty. You know, honest to God, if you have you know, a heart condition, you're going to go to your cardiologist. You don't go to your proctologist. They are both very useful, but hardly interchangeable. So, but if you shoot me an email, Scott@Scott Warwick, and say, hey, I saw you on with Pandy today. Will you shoot me the piece about the WARN Act? I'll email it right off to you. I'll take an excerpt right out of the book. I will send it to you, because now's the time to be sharing information. But good point on that WARN Act, because I've had some clients want to take advantage of just laying people off. And I looked at the facts of the situation. I'm like, you do not qualify as an emergency situation. You just want to lay some people off.
Well, that brings me to our next reason for increased cases of wrongful termination are companies using COVID as a reason and yet having inconsistent business practices that look, you know, that demonstrate otherwise. You have to be careful, employers, to use COVID as your fallback for just saying, you know what, I'm tired. I've been wanting to let that person go, you know, for years. This is my my time. This
Oh
is
yeah.
my time to jump on it. I have heard that so many times with my clients saying, you know what, I don't even really know why I kept them. I guess I was just trying to be nice. This is a good time to let them go.
Yeah.
Not a good. And then the third reason is, again, cases claiming that they were let go because of age or because of their medical conditions, and the employers wanted to show compassion. Guys, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's a situation where you have to have a valid reason. COVID cannot be used as a, I don't know, a fallback. It's not.
Yeah. And think what you just said. How nice are you? I'm so nice. I mean, these are enablers. Okay. Let me tell you, if you're a nice person, if you're Aunt B from Andy Griffith, then if you're under the age of 40, you might need to Google that. If you're nice, oh, I'm such a nice person, such and such is not doing this a good job. They're not doing a good job, but they're 60 or something like this. You're not doing them any favors. What's wrong with sitting down with someone? In this country, we seem to think that everything we talk to somebody about, if it's a problem, is a trip to the woodshed. It's not. Coaching. Just sit down and say, hey, you're not doing this quite right. What can we do to help you and everything? Well, what really happens, instead of having these tough conversations with somebody to help them, okay, saying, oh, yeah, she's not doing a good job, but now she's got this condition. I'm just going to take her out and commit corporate capital punishment on her now because I'm a nice person. That's evil. That you're an evil, horrible human being. If your kids were screwing up, wouldn't you go, oh, let me tell you right now, okay, I got a house full of people. There is activity everywhere. Not only do we have 3 cats and a dog, we had to put a dog to sleep about a month ago, Sophie, our Akita, rescue dog. And my wife's always wanted a German Shepherd. I'm like, okay, we'll get us a German Shepherd, see that maybe the hips issues and everything, breed it out. I did not think that there was a difference between an 8-week-old puppy and a 6-month-old puppy. I'm going to kill it. Okay, it's a gremlin with teeth that go everywhere. Okay, so our house is bustling, and I'll tell you today, December 1st, my oldest son, who is working as he's the one with Asperger's, that's finishing up his master's degree in psychology, and now he's applying to about 30 different PhD programs across the country. Okay, now picture that. I have both my sons home, 27 and 22, that are right here. Okay, how much tension do you think that puts in the house? Okay, it's a lot, and they go through food like gremlins. Okay, so if something's out of line, you would better say something, because it's not fair to throw a plate at them later and say, well, I've had it. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Yeah, how many times you get that call, Pandy, where somebody just didn't have, honest to God, they were just cowards, they were enablers, and they wouldn't talk to somebody to try to help them. And God forbid we give somebody additional training. And now that something has come up here, they're the first one that we push off the boat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't, and you know what, I'm pretty tough on them. I'll just walk away and say, you know what, I have nothing to do with this one. You know exactly what I was going to say when you called me. Yeah. And again, with the remote workers, Scott, we really need to remind them that communication is essential right now. So we've been saying it all year long. We're in a different environment, but our people really haven't changed. So whatever behaviors and habits they had when they were in the office, they're exhibiting or going to be demonstrating and exercising the same at home.
Oh yeah.
You've just got to stay on top of it. If it's tolerable here, it's going to be tolerable there, unless overall the work quality has changed to a point where you really need to do something and do it right, and do it professionally, and do it respectfully.
You're going to work. Yeah. You want to hear my pants story? Honest to God, we had to tell people, okay, I don't, this is actually professional dress. I got my logo, so the government pays for all my clothes and everything like this. And so that's just wonderful. I love that. But honestly, we want an isolated space, someplace that's isolated. And I have one client that they actually have a flat. This employee has a big flat, and it's like 1,000 square feet flat. I mean, it's like Friends, kind of. So what we did was say, we'll just hang some hooks up and put some petitions around you, because that's your workspace. And that way you're separate from everything else that's going on, and you're in here. You're going to work. First of all, put on some clothes. Okay, that's a rule. And honest to God, we've gotten some really interesting shots on Zoom. And I can see here, boy, I can go right down here now and I can hit record. Woohoo! Okay. There's all kinds of interesting gossip about you now. But you got to remember that you're liable for workers' comp claims. I mean, so I don't up in those. I'll tell you, those have been hot issues these days, but you're absolutely right. This Zoom stuff, and I'll tell you, I was with an agent or a conference here in Ohio, a SHRM conference, and I don't know if you've ever run into this, but they were using a format called Hop-In.
No.
You remember that?
No.
It's horrible. It's horrible. Okay, I couldn't talk to people while we're sitting. I couldn't do raising hands and everything. And so I've had some clients on these really crappy, horrible systems. I'm using one this week called Rent It. It's really good. It's just like Zoom. When you come and have a meeting, and this is what I really like. I like Zoom meetings because I can see the person, I can talk to them. I've coached a lot of people. I do a lot of executive coaching. Actually, I've done several emotional intelligence assessments in the last 6 months, and I'll coach people. I can see them, we can coach just great. Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Pandy. We got to make sure that these folks know you're going to work. That means, you don't have to wear a tie or something, but you got to put some clothes on. You don't swear into the computer and everything. You have to remember that it's on. We actually had a class with one of my clients how to take a Post-it note, okay, cover it up if you want to. So if you are going to be, or whatever, there are rules you got to have in place.
Yeah. Well, again, wrongful termination claims are on the increase. They are not going to go away. You need to be, as an employer, very conscious and talk this stuff through, even if it's, again, you talk it through with your management team so that you're all speaking the same language, you're all representing the same idea, and that idea needs to be guided, again, terminations right now, guided by either your labor law attorney or a very qualified consultant. And Scott, you and I have talked about this. We both work with individuals who are in HR that have been in their positions for 10, 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. I got a call the other day on an HR person that had been in the position for 48 years. 48 years, and trust me, in that 48 years, she did not keep up to date at the level that one would expect or one would hope. Fortunately, the company is under 100 employees, but you have to understand that this stuff can get overwhelming. And as an HR representative, if you're helping and guide your organization through these kind of things, it's always good to have a second pair of eyes or a second pair of ears on this stuff.
And it's like this year, you got to train like a Olympic athlete, don't you, Pandy? To stay up on this stuff, you got to train like an athlete.
And the sad part is, I literally have picked up clients this year because they've literally come to me and said, we can't do it. We can't read the 52-page toolkit. We can't read the 17-page OSHA. Oh, yeah. We can't read the 24-page EEO update. We can't do all of this and take care of our teams the way we're supposed to, because change is coming in so fast. So, and I'm very grateful to God that they've got that they know of me and they can come to resources. That's what we do. That's why we're here. That's why the show's here. And so let's move on into the CARES Act, because, for all of you who either worked with Scott and I or got one of these posters, which you were supposed to, you were required to hang this starting April 1st. You'll notice I have it highlighted. The expiration is December 31st. Guys, it goes away. None of you were thinking about this, and I know that, and that's why Scott and I wanted to actually talk this out with you. If the FFCRA programs go away, this is going to have a major impact on how you relate with your employees. So here's some things that we want you to think about. I'm very concerned about some of your bookkeeping and your record keeping. The IRS and the DOL were very, very specific. There is information that must be gathered if you're going to exercise one of the two programs under the FFCRA and request the tax credit that they were providing for you. It specifically says in those regs that employers were not required to provide either the paid sick leave or the extended family medical leave if the employee did not provide substantiating documentation. I mean, that was clear cut. But
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many employers I've talked to who said, oh, I know she's got a child. So I mean, I've met the child. I know she has to stay home. I'm not worried about it. I know she's telling me the truth. That's you. And I'm thrilled that you trust your employee. But if you get audited, and Scott and I are going to stand here and tell you that somebody watching this show is going to get audited, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do about it other than prepare for it.
Andy, let me ask you, if you are audited and the IRS asks you these questions and you come back and say, oh, I know Betty, she's okay, don't worry about it, what will the IRS say?
Well, first off, you'll get a very, very stern look like, thank you so much. Now I know just get your checkbook out, as you always say.
Yeah.
Just get your checkbook out.
But just like with your taxes. Oh, just take my word for it. It's okay. Oh, okay. That worked for Wesley Snipes really well. Yeah.
And a number of others. And remember, guys, you have to keep this information for 4 years. 4 years. What is it? 4 years following the date when the tax was either due or was paid.
Yeah.
So
if somebody wants this list, just shoot me an email. I'm looking at it right here, right from the regs, and it's saying you got to have the documentation. Is how you determine the amount of sick leave, documentation to show how you determine their pay.
Right.
All that stuff, documentation is to verifying the event. It's pretty clear.
For my clients, I created 2 forms, a request form and a response form. A request form saying, this is what I'm asking for. Here's the substantiating documentation. And then a response form. I kind of followed the forms of the FMLA to say, here's what we're asking for. And the employer's response back saying, this is what we're going to grant you. And this is how we're going to establish it. Guys, if you didn't have that form, you were able to use just a regular piece of documentation, but there's specific information you have to collect. If you don't have that, this is the time over the next couple of weeks for you to go back and do a self-audit. Check and see and make sure, and if your supervisors were collecting that documentation, pull that from them, please. We told you at the very beginning of this program, back in April, start up a COVID file. Start a COVID cabinet so that you can keep all of that there. You can access it when you need to. It's clean, it's organized. This is very important. If your company gets fined because they took a tax credit that they weren't supposed to, can you imagine the penalty plus the interest? And that's going to take a few checks to pay. You don't want to play games with this. So thank you, Scott, for offering to extend that list. If anyone wants to get my forms and then backtrack and have, fill out the forms, I did one that you can do online. So if someone had to stay home, they could complete it and send it in to you, or paper form. But that paperwork is extremely essential. The other thing I wanted to remind everyone too, Scott, and you please feel free to elaborate on it, but you need to be very, very careful when we keep track of the amount of the emergency family medical leave that we extended out. And most importantly, to the employers who are mandated to offer family medical leave anyways. That was not additional time added to the 12 weeks that your employees can have if they're eligible for FMLA.
Right, it's not 24 weeks.
It is not 24 weeks.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, they run concurrently. Okay, they don't run consecutively, which kind of makes sense because 12 weeks is a long time anyway. Yes. And so you could just imagine a scenario where somebody, my wife's a really good example. Our kids are not in school, but let's just kind of turn the clock back. She actually had a scheduled operation for her toes. Our youngest son crushed them a few years ago, and about 23 years later, she's getting them fixed now. Okay, well, you see, she gets FMLA time for being off for those broken toes, to have those taken care of. Well, and let's say she's off 8 weeks. Well, let's just say the kids are young, and let's say we've got in school, and let's say we live in Columbus, because understand Franklin County this is the worst place to possibly be, like, in the country, because we're like purple now. All right. So Columbus City schools are all virtual. Okay. Well, she's not going to get 8 weeks of FMLA plus 12 weeks of emergency FMLA. She's going to get 12 weeks. So she could get her 8 weeks off for her toes, which under just regular FMLA isn't paid at all. And then she can get another 4 weeks to get 67% of her wages to watch the kids while they're home. All right. So what would we need? Well, we need some kind of document or something to show that Columbus City schools were in fact virtual, which really is not too hard to do. Okay. Right. And if she was smart, what she would do is she would claim that the kids are off that whole time, so she gets 67% of her wages while she's off with her toes. So, but you kind of see there's all kinds of scenarios here to keep in mind that you're only going to get 12 weeks. And for the way this was set up, this was 12 weeks in 2020. So come December 31st, goes away. So what will Congress do? Well, right now, my understanding is Congress is kind of in a knife fight determining how much money that we're going to do for the next stimulus package. And so everything's, who knows? You're going to have to tune back in January, see if Congress decided to do anything. They don't do too many things proactively. The time frame tends to usually pass, and then Congress, wakes up and says, "Oh God, okay, we got all these people in trouble. Well, let's just put this all retro back 3 months." Stay tuned.
And that's, I guess, the bigger issue too, is we've got to understand that if we've got employees that have to stay home or need to continue this staying home and taking care of their children, the money goes away. These are conversations you need to have with your employees now, because it takes them 3 or 4 weeks to find daycare or find childcare for their children. They need time to prepare. It's not fair or professional for us to wait till January 1 and then look at an employee and say, "Oh, by the way, I have no money to give you. It's all gone."
Oh yeah, I mean, we're doing everything we can to stay up on this. I mean, really, come on. When we start even using Family First and CARES Act and emergency FMLA and all this other stuff, I mean, I still see HR people just kind of gloss over. I still have HR folks that are concerned, that are confusing the 2 weeks of paid sick leave with the emergency FMLA that is 12 weeks. Yeah. Still confusing that, and still confusing the CARES Act, which is really on the unemployment side, and the leave that they get. And so if we have HR people who are still confused on this, what do you think your employees are?
Right, exactly. I mean,
they don't know.
Exactly. So that's one of the reasons why I'm giving you an early reminder now. Make a stickler to get that poster down starting on December 31st. It goes away. Don't give them a chance to read it and hold you to it. There's nothing you can do about it. Second of all, please make sure that you're keeping your record keeping, because if someone did use the emergency FMLA through this time period, remember that if you're doing FMLA on a rolling 12-month period, that pocket of time that they used the emergency has to be deducted from the 12-week eligibility overall. So you've got to be very cautious, even though the regular FMLA is not paid, the time is not entitled. So
right, that's the big difference, isn't it?
Yes, it's huge, because they're exhausting it now, not realizing that if by some odd chance they need it later. And remember, the main reason FMLA was created was to secure and save your position and job, give you that peace of mind to take that time off with a very ill parent or a very ill child or whatever necessary that's eligible under that program. There's no duplication of time. I just want to make sure that we're going to get a lot of people blindsided, I guess is my point.
These are confusing.
A lot of people blindsided.
Are you getting a lot of folks that are still very confused over these things, Pandy? I mean, really, I'm saying that that's understandable.
All the time. And the sad part is, I think it's to the point we've been so inundated with all this stuff in such a short, 9 months is a short period of time. When you think about everything that's happened in the past 9 months, and then us wearing masks and not being able to see our family and working remotely and all this stuff on top of each other, I think people were just going, well, we call it COVID fatigue, but they're shutting down. They're shutting down. And now I'm just getting phone calls like, I don't want to make this decision. Tell me what to do. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do.
And you probably shouldn't be in an HR role, I can tell you that. I mean, that's kind of why you're there.
Yeah,
I mean, honest to God, I'm like, well, I don't know, but you think about this. This is my whole thing that just drives me crazy. There's conferences out there that I've just gone to for HR conferences. There was absolutely nothing on COVID, Black Lives Matter,
that,
or
and I couldn't, yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. I mean, why don't you just throw water on the HR people or the CPAs or whomever? The CPAs, I can't imagine. You've got to know this stuff because this is just like keeping your taxes. But I do understand, and again, this will date us a little bit, Pandy, but you remember when they passed the FMLA
Oh my
in
God.
1993 and the ADA. Okay, now it's like 30 years ago, but I vividly remember it took years
Yes.
to get those laws passed. So by the time we got the ADA, by the time we got the FMLA, by the time we got I-9s, it was already in our nomenclature. It was already part of our vocabulary. We were used to it. We've read all, it was, these things were cannon fired at us with water cannons.
Yes.
But that's no excuse. And this goes back to what I'm always saying. And of course I'm biased here, but I will tell you right now, I've seen enough clients get their fingers blown off. If the HR profession was a person, the law would be the fee. You can't take a step without hitting a landmine if you don't know. And honestly, I will stress this, and I get in trouble for stressing this because it ticks off HR people, but I'll tell you the same thing. That's your value. Nobody's going to pay you 80, 90, 150, $200,000 a year if you don't know the law and you don't know it within 24 hours. Get an answer. Well, and that's exactly what we're talking about.
With it, Scott, the issue that I run into is one of the first questions I ask HR people when I start working with them is, so where do you get your information and how have you educated yourself? How have you stayed up to date? Yeah. Let's keep going on the FFCRA program though. One of the things I want to challenge our viewers is to review also their attendance policy. I want them to review and please, so many of you in talking to you have said, well, gosh, I guess we're just going to have to give them more PTO or we're just going to have to extend more sick time. I really want to put a word of caution in how you come up with those policies, because you've got to be very careful. Again, another opportunity for someone to say that you discriminated against them if you're giving PTO or sick time in the absence of the FFCRA programs and not equally distributing that. I mean, again, we're looking for solutions. Scott and I want to coach you on the things to think about as you're putting these solutions to fruition, or even trying to design some, because there are danger signs all over that kind of a program.
Well, look at the cost. I mean, you see, this is why, and it's kind of funny, after the 2008 crash, people seem to all discover, it's like, whoa, wow, labor's expensive. Yeah, I mean, we bought a whole civil war over the cost of labor, okay? Yeah. So most companies, by the time you take everything, the cost of attracting and retaining employees, which is salaries, bonuses, benefits, mileage, cell phones, technology, all the things that go into the cost of attracting and retaining an employee. That's the real cost of labor today. 60, 70% of your budget is labor. Now, just assume for a moment that you hate people, that I'm a sociopath and I can't stand people. You're like Thurston Howell from Gilligan's Island. You can't stand people. You want to make sure that you are taking care of your people. First of all, I can't just be giving away money because I want to. If you increase your cost of labor by 5 to 10%, most companies will wipe out their retained earnings and their profit for the year. There's no other part of your budget I can say that about. You increase your cost of labor by 10 to 20%, 25%, you go out of business. That's General Motors. Of course, the government isn't going to be there to bail me out.
We don't know that the government's going to be anywhere to bail.
No, the government's not going to be anywhere. Say they might be borrowing money from you.
Well, and attendance policies are of a concern for me because remember, if it's in your handbook, you have to follow it.
Yes.
You can add an addendum, which again, we've been trying to say with COVID, don't change the handbook, just add addendums. But if you've got, an attendance policy that says, well, I can only have 3 occurrences in a period of time, or if you're absent for too long, you've got to be very, very cautious about, again, this program ending and you going back to your old policies. If you need to be making some changes or alterations to that, you need to be thinking about that now. Talk about what's best for the business that will be ultimately for the employees.
And you can make that clear.
Yes.
And honestly, if you're going to do something special, I would say, and I have a client that they had to shut down for a month, but they pulled things around and they just said, yes, we can pay everybody full wages for a month while they're off, and that's what we're going to do. It wasn't, we're going to do this for Bob and Sally and whatever, because they're, whatever. It was everybody across the board. It was perfect. It's what they could afford to do. But I can tell you, after that 1 month, if they hadn't been back, the ship couldn't do that anymore. And I don't know if you are looking in the paper. I got the Columbus Dispatch, again, not a plug here, but there's got a whole section in here today of AMC theaters that are closing for good, restaurants that are closing for good. That's what happens. You've got to do something that's going to take care of everyone. And so, your point is really well made, Pandy, in that, honest to God, we would love to keep everybody on the payroll forever until this COVID thing passes. But, I'm pulling the reports today that, you're going to be lucky that we're going to have any type of herd immunity with vaccines a year from now.
Yes, that's the same thing I read this morning, third quarter of next year, maybe. Right. Let's keep going on the thought of the attendance policy. I'm really concerned that we may have a number of individuals who have now grown somewhat entitled because we gave out PPP money for them to stay home. And remember, the PPP money for the most part has all been disappeared and gone. So you really need to talk to your employees now about what your new practices are going to be until we know what new programs are coming forward. I also want to really, really encourage all of you to please keep that self-reporting practice, that self-reporting policy in place. I don't know why anybody's taking temperatures anymore. That just drives me nuts, because it's not a major symptom anymore. That has been proven that it's not. There's 40% of our population that's asymptomatic. A temperature is not going to prove whether somebody has the virus or not. However, let's talk about the EEOC's that privilege that they have given us under the pandemic to continue asking medical questions and collecting medical data. Remember, that's under not the IRS, and it's not under anything other than the CDC has established the pandemic. The pandemic's not going to go away till the World Health Division or the CDC, says it isn't. So that's going to continue on. So the EEO, to my knowledge and everything I've read so far, Scott, correct me, EEO is going to allow us to keep asking questions in regards to the pandemic, but only in regards to the pandemic. And
that will end one day.
It will end one day. And that's why I really want to keep going back over and reminding our employers that information is solely for you to be able to maintain a safe and secure workplace for the rest of your employees. That is not for you to use for any other reason.
Right.
And we gave you the option. Scott and I went back over and helped you understand the importance of the employee questionnaire. If they were going to come back into the environment, yes, you can ask them if they've been, if they've been tested, if they are currently waiting on a test, if they are living with someone who is currently positive. You can ask if they have experienced symptoms, but Scott, I don't encourage that question anymore. I just don't.
I'll tell you, that's one thing. And again, we talked earlier this year, March, April, and May is pretty much completely dedicated to studying, reading COVID, trying to make some sense of it. And I'm more of a verbal, visual type of guy. I write stuff. I mean, I can do that. So you got to put that out there. But I'll put these things into video so people will understand. And that's the thing, is when you start looking into what the ADA requires and what you can and cannot ask, asking somebody about their COVID and stuff like this is a total violation of the ADA. But because we're in a pandemic, and every 100 years, this is hopefully the next one won't be for 100 years, or maybe 200 or 300 years, and we'll get smart. This reminds me, I don't know if this will date some people. We had a shooter in the South Belt in Columbus about probably 20 years ago. You remember that, Pandy, in the news? We had a guy that was out there shooting people on the expressway as they're driving.
71,
and so,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, it takes one guy, right, or whatever, and it was a guy. Yeah. But so this is out there by 23 South on the South Belt and everything. So basically, the city of Columbus and the Highway Patrol was saying, okay, if you want to speed through there, knock yourself out. So you could go 90, 100 miles an hour through there because, well, that's probably not so good to be going 80 or 90 miles an hour through there. But the truth of the matter is there is somebody shooting at you. Well, as soon as they catch the shooter, guess what? Well, you can't drive. You got to go the speed limit again. But I will tell you, if I wasn't going 80 miles an hour through there, I'd get run off the road. And I'd pass cops. They just wave at you. They could have been understood. That is what's happening now. And again, if somebody wants to, actually, that is going to be in my legal update next week. If somebody wants to see the actual questions you can and can't ask and what the guidance is directly from the EEOC, just shoot me an email and I will email that document to you and you'll see them all listed there. But yes, you can ask these types of things, but my whole thing is educate your people. And I've actually got a free video out there. If you want to download it and show your people, it will educate them. Blue lips, okay? Like you see blue lips, you probably should go to the emergency room because you're dying. Okay, that's what that means. You're not getting any blood flow to your face. But there's all kinds of things to look for. Loss of taste, loss of smell. You want to be educating your people as to what these things are. And honestly, it's amazing why we've had it for so long. I saw something this morning, and I got to double check it, so you might want to go out and look, but there was a report from the CDC that someone was predicting that a third of all Americans will contract COVID before this is over. That's 100 million people. Okay, that's a lot of people. Okay, so it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Okay, we're getting thousands of new cases here in Columbus, Ohio, every day. And I'll tell you, I was on the phone with somebody that still thinks this is a hoax. I'm like, well, let me just tell you. I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I had an uncle who died from it. My wife had an aunt who died from it. I got a little cousin who tried to get into a hospital bed in Columbus and couldn't. So they sent him down to Circleville because there were no COVID beds. And this is firsthand stuff. So it's going to get worse. More people are going to catch it. I'm not saying you're going to die. I'm saying more people are going to catch it, like Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, things like this. Educate your people so that they can self-monitor and say, hey, I think I've got these symptoms. Okay, you can find out what the symptoms are. You can document it and everything. Use that paid sick leave. But educate, and educate about the masks. I am so sick of seeing somebody wear their mask like that. I just want to go up and, if you got anything on your face from the nose down that's showing, we should be able to punch you there. Okay.
There's a number of states around the country too that are requiring this kind of training. And
yeah,
one of them, the closest to Ohio for us. So
yeah.
If you've got multiple locations, please be aware you may have other laws in some of these other states that are going far beyond what Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky are doing right now. And we do have national viewers, so I want you to be very cognizant of what your state laws are. But the bottom line is here, stay focused on the pandemic.
Yes.
And if you're going to document anything, make sure that it's documented in there that you're asking for COVID symptoms and you're not just asking, have you experienced any of these symptoms? Guys, that's a major, major faux pas. You will get in trouble with the EEO and ADA if you're asking for symptoms in a general term. Again, this is information that should be maintained in a very confidential manner and only should be given to people who have a need to know. So
let me just interject real quick, because if you're in a state like Ohio, and most of the states, we're a one-party state for recording. I will tell you, let me tell you, I got a couple of cases going on right now, and usually people today don't say a whole lot of stuff, but they will text stupid things, okay? And you get those things. But when you're on the phone with somebody, like not out and about and everything, let me tell you right now, I'm getting more recordings of supervisors and owners of companies saying things that are just wrong. They're illegal. Okay. And so just like Pandy's saying, these exceptions to the ADA right now are for COVID and COVID only. And even then, You want to be very judicious because you want to be respectful. Okay. And I'll tell you, it would be interesting if we could do a poll to see how many folks out there, the thousands of people that are listening, how many folks know somebody that actually ended up in the hospital from this stuff. So these are sensitive, very emotional types of issues. And of course, you see some folks, it hits them and they just roll with it. And other people, it kills them.
Right. One of the other things I wanted, and when we're running out of time, I just real quickly, Scott, we've got to remind everybody too that no matter where you are in the country today, many of your testing sites are funded through the CARES Act.
Oh, yes.
Please be aware that this is another thing that you and your team need to be thinking about and preparing for. If a new relief package is not passed as of December 30th, and the Health Collaborative was on the show 2 weeks ago, and Katie was very open to say, look, our funding for all these testing sites has been through the CARES Act. Once that expires, those testing sites go away.
Oh, yeah.
What, as an employer, are you going to do when an employee looks at you and says, I think I need to be tested, but I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Look, you're going to have to be very, very patient and compassionate because none of us have good answers on any of this.
Yeah.
But without the testing sites, that means that the medical facilities are going to have to pick up the slack.
Well, they can't.
The insurance companies are going to have to pick up the costs, and you may have to allow your employees to, wait in line at a doctor's office somewhere, or, go into quarantine just because they feel that the symptoms they have might be COVID, don't know if they're COVID because they can't be tested. I mean, there's so many things that can get complicated here real quick with the absence of this funding and these programs. This is crucial information, and we have said this over and over again. You've got to prepare ahead of time. You've got to be thinking about this stuff ahead of time.
Well, my wife I told you about my wife's toes, okay, which are really nice now. So she got her toes operated on. It was an hour and a half in Central Ohio to sit there and wait at a facility. Now, we're getting the CARES funding now.
Yes.
And the waiting was an hour and a half.
Yes.
Now, God help you if you have been cursed to live in Chicago or LA or some of these other places. I'm seeing horror stories. I don't know what it's like in Cincinnati, but I can tell you you go get a test here in Columbus, you can easily be looking at an hour and a half, easy.
Oh, no, and the Health Collaborative was very generous in offering yesterday. Their goal has been to establish testing sites so that no one person would have to go more than 10 minutes to get to a test.
Oh, that's amazing.
Now,
but that's with the funding.
With the funding, and that's why I really want our viewers to be very aware that, and I can't tell you that you should be tested now and not need to be tested in 4 or 5 weeks after the plan goes away. That's so unrealistic, and we all know that. But at the same time, as much as we want to believe that a relief package is going to be passed, we don't know what the contents of that's going to be, and we have no idea who's going to have control over that and how quickly it will be distributed and administered. We already know the challenges of the vaccine. And again, I want the vaccine to be a topic here in 2 weeks so that, again, let Scott and I just bait you a little bit with something to think about on top of all the stuff we've been talking about with the FSRA. Please, as employers, start thinking now, how are you going to view the vaccine in regards to a condition of employment? And I'm talking about your existing employees as well as candidates coming forward for future employment. Is it going to be vital? Is it going to be necessary? Is it going to be essential? And there are so many different things. We're going to talk about all the things that you need to consider, all the things that are imperative and that could prevent you from requiring the vaccine or making it absolutely a definite. So, Scott, is there any last words? I mean, we've talked about a lot of material, but any last words for the viewers?
I would just remind everybody it isn't over. Okay. And honestly, I'm sort of watching and listening to see what kind of a Thanksgiving bump we're going to have. But I will tell you right now, we've already made plans. We stayed at home for Thanksgiving, just my sons and my wife and I and all the pets. And it is looking like that's what Christmas is going to be like too. I'd be astonished if it wasn't, because again, next time we're going to talk about the vaccines, oh my gosh, they're just going to be getting started. in the next couple of weeks, just getting started. So, so stay tuned for that, but start making your plans for 2021. What are you going to do? And stay tuned, because who knows what Congress is going to do, because a lot of these safety nets are going to go away in 30 days.
Yes, less than. Today's the first.
Today's first.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, our takeaways from the show today, you know how I always try to give you training tips. Well, here's our mantra that we started. But guys, you've got to start listening to your employees. You've got to start talking to them. Make sure that you're aware of their mental health, the reason for their performance issues or the reason for their attendance issues. The COVID fatigue is ever present at all levels. I'm even seeing it at a C level for some companies. It's eating away at us, and we have got to be aware of it. Second of all, train. It is absolutely imperative that you train your supervisors, your frontline supervisors and managers. Speak the same language. Make sure that they're coming to HR or to the individuals of authority with any kind of issues or any kind of concerns. Don't let them assume that something's too superficial to talk about. And we'll talk about that here in coming shows about things that are happening that we need to really pay attention there. Communicate. Nothing is too small to talk about. Partner in every way possible. We've always said, surround yourself with a great banker. Get yourself a really good CPA. Make sure that your labor law attorney or your HR consultant is competent and up to speed and is appropriate for the questions that you have. As Scott said, a tax lawyer is not the same as a labor law attorney. So, or contact one of us and we will be more than happy to discuss in further detail anything that we show you on the show. And probably the most important part is stay positive and stay flexible. Know that you're not alone. We're all in this together, and we will all change and adapt, and we'll all grow through all this together. I want to thank Scott. You are just such a blessing to me, and you've been so fantastic through this year on the show. We will have you back. You know you're coming back. My name is Pandy Pridemore, Principal Consultant for the Human Resource USA, and I want to thank you for being here. Thank ICRC for one more hour, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks.